this is Jonas. Welcome to another episode of the Bonsai Wire podcast. Today we have I got to do better than that. I say we got a whole bunch of people here. You do the start. Actually, why don't you do it?
No.
Just say, this is the Bonsai Wire podcast.
Hello, this is the Bonsai Wire podcast
What's your name?
featuring me, Sam Tan, and
I don't know if I quite get a feature, but my name's Addison Galambos. Joining Jonas and Andrew in the room here today.
Yeah, Sam and Addison are helping with this week's episode, where we are going to talk about what it's like to... They're looking at me so intensely. They're dying to know what I'm about to say right here.
We're getting this spontaneously, so we
Yeah,
have
it's
no
news to
idea
everyone.
what's going to go down here.
We're going to talk today about what it's like getting started in bonsai and very quickly accelerating from there in different ways, whether in leadership positions in their clubs or by making really serious endeavors into their studies. And so Andrew and I have talked about our histories in bonsai a lot, and we thought it'd be really fun to hear from Addison and Sam. Sam, how long have you been working on little trees now?
I think I started 2017, I believe, when I bought my first tree from Groveway Nursery out in Hayward.
What made you think I need a small tree in my life?
I was like dabbling with succulents and planting cool, making cool compositions like for home decor. And I just thought, well, what other cool succulents exist that I can put in pots? And, I looked up these really cool cacti and things. And then, I guess my imagination like wandered, and I was like, what other cool, incredible things can you put in pots? And then I found a picture of bonsai. Back then too, I had a Australian coworker who had dabbled in bonsai himself. And so I guess he teased me of a lot of these techniques, like, oh yeah, like that picture you saw, you could do that by X. I saw like a juniper, a ton of deadwood. Oh yeah, you can create that by doing this. I don't know how much of that he actually did, but he knew about the techniques, and so that really kind of tickled my curiosity.
And so just 5 years later, you're the de facto president of the Bonsai Society of San Francisco. What went wrong?
That took, I think that took only 2 years, because I've been the president for almost 3 years now. Got involved in the club, and the club helped me get into it. I think I was, looking online for local resources. Bonsai Society of San Francisco came up. I went to a member workshop at some point, and I think no one showed up except Andrea Burho, and she felt bad because I guess more people were supposed to show up, and she was like, "Oh no, don't worry, I'll link you up with someone." And then she linked me up with Gary Tom, who I brought a tree I had then to his house, and he helped me do my first kind of styling, branch selection, some basic wiring, and I was like, wow, this is great. I'm gonna keep coming, and a few years later, got involved. I think I joined the board because at the time Eric Schrader was very involved in the board. He looked like he needed help, and he had been helping me out.
I think any board member looks like they need help in a club.
Yeah, I think it was obvious to me that he was doing a lot of things and he could use a hand. And Eric had already been been very helpful to me in my bonsai journey, so I figured I would give him a hand and be involved. I mean, and the club has given me a hand too. So those two things combined kind of got me into board membership.
And you're one of those people who your bonsai education is on a very different path than your club affiliation relationship. In other words, you rely on the club for one set of bonsai experiences and other sources for most of your education. And so how's that been working out for you? Tell us a little more about where you do the bulk of your learning and
Interesting.
How that fits in. Because it's kind of funny. Most people learn in their club, and that's like the obvious starting point. And you're not doing that very clearly.
I see. I think back. How did that start? So I guess, Jonas, you're my first official, teacher. I don't know if the first ever workshop I signed up for was with you. I know at some point, I was coming to a lot of your free workshops, which I kept saying shouldn't be free because, you're letting us do all this stuff and it's all this time. And obviously we weren't speeding you up, we're slowing you down. So, I remember attending those. I don't know if that was ever like my first workshop. I actually forget how.
Yeah, I remember you at those informal workshops far more. In fact, to come full circle, you actually worked on a tree that we have a special. So in Addison's club, there's a special display for a member who owned a tree which Sam worked on a number of years ago, which Andrew then purchased for me, and it's pretty much come through contact of all of us in that way. The little pine.
Kind of the Chuhine red black pine.
That's right.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. But back to the learning. I guess in the club, there wasn't like a teacher. I think BSSF has always been different from the other Bay Area clubs in that, never had a sensei as I understand it.
Mm-hmm.
So learning was kind of informal. I had dabbled in many hobbies in my life, and I have probably more hobbies than I need. And I quickly realized I wanted to get much better at this hobby. And, the way in which you get better at a hobby is to go find a teacher, or like go find someone who can like really teach you and answer all your questions. And I guess club meetings didn't give me all of those things. They were more like informative, fun lectures of a social element. And so it was quickly obvious to me that wasn't where you quickly progress your skills. You get a nice tidbit once a month, and that was it. And that was not enough for me. So I had to go outside the club to find more.
And you did in a way more accelerated than possibly anyone I know.
You have said that many times. I guess I can give the kind of my learning in a nutshell. I think I started learning from you at the time. Also, I realized that Ryan Neal was teaching online, with or like he had really informative videos. I think back then there was some on YouTube that I thought were like in a format and a language that made sense to me. I was watching those as well for like additional enrichment. I think I might have been a pro member at that point, also kind of going online and asking questions, because when you're a beginner, you have like a ton of questions, like, oh, well, if you fertilize like this much in this tree, then what about this other tree in this other situation? And you just like, it's an itch and you need someone to answer it. And, real humans aren't always available. So I was pretty involved there. At some point, I read, I think Gary Tom lent me Michael Hagedorn's book. And I guess I read it. It was a great, awesome read. And I guess this idea of intense study was kind of very appealing to me.
How many of Michael's seasonals did you come up to?
3.
3, okay.
3? Yeah, so at the time I was like, I want even more than the occasional, when Jonas is free, like, let's do like an informal workshop. I want something structured and intense. And at the time, Michael had openings in his class. I guess I looked at what I think was available then, and that's what I found. And I read Michael's book, and I'm like, sure, let's do it. This sounds awesome. And obviously I look at his work, and I like his work as well. And obviously he learned from someone who was very famous and very good. So that all kind of checked out. Went to Michael's seasonals. And at the time too, I was like considering a job change, and like I was getting more into bonsai, and I'm like, gosh, wouldn't it be great if I could do something like a seasonal for like every day for some period of time between jobs? Because I mean, everyone needs to take a break between jobs.
There's not a lot of options between a seasonal and a full-time apprentice. There's like in between those two things, there's not a lot of
exactly. Yeah, I wasn't about to pack up and go to Japan for a few years. But even though I really enjoyed the seasonals, I wanted kind of even more, because Michael's seasonals were great. They're very structured. I think we covered a lot of breath, a lot of horticulture, a lot of techniques that were appropriate for the season. But I was like, gosh, I still don't think I have enough if I acquired a valuable or good piece of material to elevate it. I think I felt like after the seasonals, I had what I needed, I think, to keep a tree in good health, hopefully, and to do the appropriate techniques to advance it, but not really to kind of impart my vision on it, if that makes sense. So that was a skill set that I thought I needed more intense study to do. And so eventually I think by chance I like ended up at Ryan's place one day visiting. I was actually visiting Randy Knight to look at his wares, and he asked me if I had ever gone to Mirai, and I said I wanted to, but the timing never lined up, and they had garden visits only on certain days. And he's like, I'll call Ryan. I'll get you in. And Ryan was there just like this one Sunday alone, and I showed up, and we chatted, and we we connected, and then I just said, hey, I have this 3 months coming up. Would you need help? Would you need an intern? He's like, sure, of course. Send in your application and we'll go from there. And, there's quite a few months before that actually happened and a few uncertainties, but it ended up happening, and went there to study, and that really upped my game quite a bit. And every so often I go back to help out, because I guess I'm more kind of used to Ryan's techniques, and he can trust me with more work. So it's been good.
It's such an amazing experience. Like Andrew said, we don't have a lot between. It's like there's a half day or full day workshop. There's maybe a 3-day intensive or study group, and then you just jump straight to Japan. There's not much in the middle of that, and you're living that. Like, that must be amazing to just work on trees day after day after day.
It's you're right. It wasn't obvious how I would learn some of those things, and it wasn't obvious to me how much I would get out of 3 months. I just hoped like as much as possible. Obviously, it's not the length of an actual apprenticeship, but Ryan was a really good teacher, and I came at the right time where I thought, I think he had some spare cycles to kind of, give me instruction, which was great. So yeah, it did work out.
And it's clear in your work that you are absolutely demonstrating proficiency with those skills you've learned and those abilities to elevate the trees, as you say. And it's just clear that like that's not what you get after coming to a couple of half-day workshops. That's the result of having struggled with trees and had feedback on that, and struggled with some more trees and had feedback on that. And it's for those who don't know, now, do you appear in many videos with Eric? I know there's a handful out there.
Only incidentally, once in a while. I think Eric put out 2 videos where 2 or 3 where I was on them.
And some may have been club affairs. I don't know if they were
I
open.
think so, yeah. You may find me on the internet, maybe. But thank you. I'm glad you think that. And the one more thing I'll say is that even after being at Ryan's Mirai for 3 months, I don't think that itself was enough, because then, I had to go back to my own little collection, which expanded, and kind of take risk on my own trees. Because, when I was starting off with Ryan, obviously he's taking controlled risk with me. We started with trees where he would set the structure. He basically kind of told me what to do, and then I filled in the gaps, right? But over time, I'm like, I still haven't made a tree from scratch myself yet. And, I had to go acquire the material and take the time and take the risk. And over time, doing that in my own collection, going back and helping out in Mirai, and kind of being challenged with more advanced material, or like more, over time, like Ryan would say, well, yeah, you can put all the structural wire on, and you can just do this from scratch. That process over time kind of got me better, and I think has allowed me to do the things I can do now that I think fresh out of the 3 months I wasn't able to do.
Doesn't that sound nice, Andrew? In
It does
terms
sound
of like
nice.
how to learn, like
Yeah.
that would be a fantastic way to go about it.
Yeah, maybe we need to start offering 3-month internships.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
to
are you gonna
people.
have internships at your garden?
Yeah, because
I would-
we have Addison right here,
Yeah,
who probably love.
I'd probably we'd need to get Addison on some more deciduous love.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
definitely
system.
been neglected in my curriculum so far.
Yeah, but no, I think that's a good opportunity, especially for someone like me. I don't think I'm ready for a full-time apprentice at this point.
But I definitely have a couple months of full-time work I could use, and
Oh, yeah. All
starting
of us do.
today.
yeah.
No question.
Addison, what's your bonsai journey? How'd you find bonsai, and how'd you get to where you are?
So I grew up on the East Coast, and I think the first time I remember being introduced to bonsai was we came out to San Francisco for a vacation as a family, and we saw I was I think around 13, and we saw the cart on the side of the road that sells bonsai trees, and I was like, whoa, that's sweet, like let's get some of those. So brought some back. Of course they died, but I had a book, and that kind of passion and interest drove me to join some clubs as I was moving around the different areas for the next 10-15 years. And then when I moved to the Bay Area and after college and started working and I was more settled, I was like, okay, I want to make this one of my core hobbies. And so I sought out the bonsai garden at Lake Merritt. I sought out some local clubs, and I just found a way to start surrounding myself with folks who love bonsai.
How's working at the Lake Merritt collection been for your practice? Because there's some real amazing trees there.
Yeah, I'd say it's good and it's bad. I mean, it's an amazing experience, and I love working at the garden and getting to see that that level of refined trees. And there's obviously unlimited amount of work to do, which is great. The two things one thing I think they could do a little bit better is directly, like having almost mini apprenticeships with the curators or the assistant curators within the garden. Like I was lucky enough to work a lot with Jerry Carpenter on like the trees that were under his scope. And so it's very overwhelming starting out on bonsai, and you go to this garden with these really refined trees. You don't want to make a bunch of mistakes, or like you don't know what to prune or what to do. So being able to go with someone and work specifically on like a small scope or like a bite-sized scope of work was awesome. And then the other thing was where I would recommend people start is you can always help with repotting. So I now have like a Stockholm syndrome relationship with repotting where I've just done so much repotting that now it's like one of my favorite things to do. So now don't ask me that question in February right after the end of repotting season. But I think that was another cool thing was pruning can be styling can be very difficult to get started with, but like helping out repotting, just like holding a tree while somebody else does the root work, for example, like that can be a great way to get started. And that's how I my first 2 years of bonsai was repotting season 4 months a year.
Yeah, fun. And you've been going and doing some bonsai study as well too, right? Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I had to move a few times, so wasn't able to have as large of a personal collection to work on. So when I moved back to the Bay Area, I actually messaged Sam on Instagram, and we just started talking, and I came over and started helping out with his collection. And so, Sam builds awesome trees and has a lot of like great work to do. So, we've become friends and I've been doing a lot of work with him and learning from him. And then more traditionally, I started taking classes with Todd Schlafer out in Colorado, and he just has an amazing scope of material at his nursery. So his classes, that's exactly like that type of Yamadori collected material, coniferous material, like is something that I'm really interested in developing my skills on. So, and he just started his nursery out there, or like he moved into a new building with some really great facilities. And so I've really been enjoying going out and working with him as well.
So I have a question for you and Sam. And it's, Jonas and I have been doing bonsai for over a decade, before the Instagram and YouTube game was really strong. Yeah. And so I'm guessing you get into bonsai in the last few years. You consume all this information online, probably Instagram and YouTube is probably the first place to look. Is that right? And so what is it like learning off of those platforms and then going to a seasonal or an intensive? And like, how does the information or the acquisition of building your or bettering your practice compare online versus in person?
I actually didn't get onto Instagram until after I got pretty serious about bonsai, and I'm like, I probably need a place to put all my stuff that is not the mess that is Facebook, which has my personal stuff. And so I started an Instagram. So I actually never looked at bonsai on Instagram before.
Where did you consume your bonsai information when you were just getting started?
That's a great question.
Was it YouTube?
Not even that much YouTube. I mean, I did buy some show books. I did already enjoy visiting Japan as a tourist. So early on in my hobby, I'd swung by like Saitama and the Yomiya Bonsai Museum. So I'd seen some bonsai in Japan. I don't think I was consuming a lot of bonsai content before I started getting serious. And at some point, I'm like, I need to inoculate my brain with like bonsai every day. I need to see more of them. And it's something I actually got from Michael Seasonals, and talking to you too. The more you look at them, form opinions in your head, kind of challenge yourself and like understand why a thing may have been designed a certain way. Like it works a certain muscle, right?
Yeah, so that's a good word, consume. I think it's when you're early in your bonsai practice, even late, like Jonas and I do this a lot too. Like we try and consume as much bonsai as we physically can. That's why it's good to go to shows like the Expo coming up. That's why it's good to go to club shows like the East Bay show that we're here for this weekend. It's consuming as much bonsai as you can. I don't know. It's a good thing.
But quickly back to your question, I did watch a few videos. I think I bought one of Boone's like online like DVDs. I watched a whole bunch of Ryan's stuff on Rye Live. How is that different from actually touching the trees in person? Super different, because that analog sensation, all the kind of unspoken things and all the kind of peripheral vision that you need to effectively do bonsai, that was, a big shock to me. But what was also interesting is after doing some of these things in person, getting that in-person kind of class experience and having my mistakes pointed out, going back to the same videos and then rewatching it and then learning a whole different set of things. Because someone could tell you, oh, the wire has to go clockwise in the direction of the turn, and like when as you're bending it, you want to bend it with the turn of the wire, and you're like, that makes sense to me in an abstract intellectual way. And then until you like did it wrong or like know what it feels like to do it right, it doesn't stick, So that part has been fascinating to me.
Yeah. What about you, Addison? How did you consume bonsai information first, and how?
I'd say initially it was very cerebral for me. It was all like consume as many videos and Jonas Dupuis articles as I could. But when I really wanted to when I shifted my focus from like I want to maintain trees to I want to build trees, then like you really need to develop those technical skills. And so I think articles and videos only take you so far, and I think you could only get so much out of them without being able to connect it to like the physical experience of enacting a technique, right? So I think how I approach it, I'm very like goals oriented person. So I will set up I have a spreadsheet or like I have a journal and a doc where I track like these are the 4 skills I want to learn for this half, and like these are the resources I'm going to consume before I physically go and try it. And then I take notes on each of the classes. I have a link to the Jonas's articles that showcase the thing, and then I go and do it. And then I go and reconsume those resources. I'm not a robot. I don't watch every second of the video over again. But then I find that the second or third watch of a lot of these really important videos that you find online, you just start getting more and more information out of them.
Well, so I'm curious, one of the $1 million questions is, you two have learned a lot in a very short amount of time, and a lot of people getting started in bonsai find it really challenging to get anywhere, let alone to get as far as the two of you have gotten. And so what do you suggest people to? Like, what strategies do you think you'd recommend to people, in different parts of the country who may not have access to teachers nearby, or may not have the resources to travel all over the country to find out those teachers? Like, I know a lot of people want to have paths more similar to your experiences, and what do you recommend on those?
Well, I would first start with figuring out what your goals are in the hobby, right? So, that'll help you. Like you said, there's so much information out there. So you really want to focus on like, what do I want to learn, and like, what's the point of me learning it, right? To help you narrow in, right? If you want to, if your goal is to have your own like really strong personal collection, right? Or like be able to build trees, or if you want to work with a specific species, that can really help you narrow down your focus. And then on a more like tactical side of it, I think I can't add enough, plus ones to just go to your hardware store, your Ace, your Lowe's, pick up some nursery containers, of boxwood or, garden junipers, and, repot those during repotting season. Take them from a nursery container into a bonsai pot, or, style them, and like make your mistakes on these $10, $15 pieces of material. And then, you can grow from there.
You can make mistakes on more expensive trees later.
Yes. Yeah.
I do get that not everyone has the means to say travel or find a bonsai professional in the area, because it may not exist. But if it is remotely possible to save up for it, I think it's probably well worth it, for a bunch of reasons. Like, again, I said there are tons of good online content or articles out there, and you should consume all of those to kind of get a broad foundation, right? So that if you ever thought this thing, at least it's already kind of in your head. But to be there physically, getting the analog sensation, to getting all the unwritten, unexplained things kind of pointed out to you, and also just in general, just the level set. You know, like when you work with a really high level professional, they set the bar for a lot of things, like make these cuts flat, like the wire, like apply this wire correctly, no gaps, so on and so forth. Like those things, like after a day or a weekend or whatever of kind of being subject to that standard, you adjust your standard of work completely, and that pushes you in a way that you just can't push your.
It's an accelerant. It really it's it's pouring gas on the fire and really ramps it up fast.
Right.
I think.
You need to know what good can be, right? Like what that looks like and feels like, and
Was it challenging when you guys were getting started, seeing the like difference of trees online and then seeing them in person? And it's like, wow, I didn't think that looked like that. And trying like seeing them 2D versus 3D, was that a challenging thing? I know a lot of people struggle with that, and it gets to the point where I've finally gotten in my own practice where I feel like I can look at a photo and actually know what that tree, it feels like 100% in person or close, versus like it's hard. Like you shop for trees online, you see them on bonsai auctions or something, you see them on eBay, you're like, oh, that's a small tree, and then you get it and it's huge and it's like, whoa, that looks so much better in person. It's, I don't know, I can like the first time, a good example for me is like when I first visited Michael Hagedorn's garden. I'd followed his blog for years, and then seeing the trees in person after the blog was like, wow, these are, for one, they're a lot bigger than I thought they were, and just, I don't know, they feel different in person. I don't know.
I think that's still the case, you know. I mean, I can kind of imagine, but some trees are quite different when experienced in person. Whether or not it's challenging, I didn't think of it as challenging, but I definitely think about this for a bit more. Like, I guess what was shocking about like going from 2D to 3D is maybe what you're getting at. Any thoughts, Addison?
Yeah, I don't know if it was a challenge per se. I agree that they're very different. Like it's almost two different ways to experience the hobby. But I don't know that I was like learning how to build trees specifically from pictures. So like I think if I was doing that, it would be more difficult. Or like I think it's very hard to translate like a 2D image into like when I'm trying to design a bonsai, like okay, like stuff comes out on the left and the right. But like that doesn't really translate, at least for me, super well into like, oh, where do the branches need to end up? So I found that most of that has been from like trees in person. I haven't been able to get that level of learning from online materials for me personally.
Yeah, and whether video or in print, that's just really hard to translate. It's probably the number one thing that slips through the cracks, because you can look at wiring diagrams and figure out the basics. You can maybe, if you think you're wiring well and someone tells you you're leaving gaps or it's inconsistent, that's pretty easy to figure out, at least that gap. It may be hard to do it well, but those are learnable techniques. Knowing how to spatially design a tree that is technically proficient, in other words, can stay healthy and meets your aesthetic goals, yeah, that until you do it, I don't know that there's a shortcut to that one.
Yeah, that I think that sums up exactly how I think of it.
I think I collected my thoughts on this. When I first saw the trees in person, they did not disappoint. They were awesome, but I didn't know what made them awesome. Like I just experienced them, and like, you know, when something is working, you don't think about it because like there's nothing missing, I guess. So over time, the first time I went to Japan, seeing some of these bonsai, I'm like, wow, this is awesome. And this is awesome too. And it's like, this is also awesome. And they're all different styles. And, you know, I tried to do the whole bonsai nerd thing where I like kind of look under a little bit, but I didn't fully get it back then because I guess I didn't understand the structure of trees that well. So I wasn't that curious about what was going on there. I had some superficial understanding of what to look out for. Now like next time I go to Japan or next time I go to shows, I am much more curious about structure and different structures and how different people think about it. So that makes my critical eye for bonsai has kind of evolved with time as I like have kind of understood more things about building trees.
Well, and speaking of seeing these trees at shows, are the two of you excited for the expo coming up?
I'm very pumped.
Hyper stoked. Yes. I'm also showing 2 trees for, I guess, the first time, like outside of a club show. So it's a whole new experience for me.
It's a debut. Yeah, that's awesome.
I know. Yeah. I mean, after, I guess, a few years of kind of training some trees in my collection. It's kind of nice that they're finally at the stage where they can be showed. Well, I hope the pictures weren't too misleading. I do probably have like
Speaking of 2D and 3D,
above average picture setup. So maybe my trees are like below average, but pictures are above average, and that's why they got selected. We'll see.
We were just talking about that before you got here. The jury members showed a strong bias toward good, clean work and good, clean photos. And your trees excelled at both of those. So we'll see what the trees look like when they show up. But we know to expect the good work. And so anyone that takes the effort to take the good photographs is extremely likely to pass the bar for the work as well.
True.
So we're looking forward to that. Addison, what about you? Have you been to many exhibits yet outside of club shows?
Not too many outside of club shows. I've been to Japan once, not for a show, but just to tour some of the gardens there. So I saw a lot of high quality trees there in the Omiya Bonsai Village and things like that. Other than that, though, it's mostly been club shows. I actually have had I don't know. I mean, as a hobbyist, I think I've been able to travel to a decent number of places to see bonsai trees. And it's been interesting, especially within the U.S., seeing the regional differences between like how, like not only the species of trees at the shows, but also like, some shows end up having a much higher bias towards suiseki, or like some, like the pots are a lot more unique than other areas. And like just the regional differences, I think, come into play too, which has been fun to see.
Yeah, it's what Andrew and I enjoy about the national show to a large degree, is you see trees from all over the country, and we don't know the potters of half of them. It's just it's a long tail of stand makers and pot makers, and even some species we don't recognize. It's really
it's fun to see bonsai show up from all the nicks and corners and crevices of this really big country. So it makes it there's always stuff that surprises me about a big national show.
That's right. Well, if you were to be giving last-minute tips, I know we have to wrap up shortly, what are some big things you'd encourage people at the start of your journeys? Have your club leadership roles contributed to your bonsai practice? Or are you just telling people to literally pull up the tent stakes and just run to someone's garden as fast as you can? Or what do you think?
I think just to repeat what the advice I gave just now, find a good teacher. Save up if you need to find a good teacher, and also kind of invest in getting material for your own material to learn on. I mean, it may not have to be the highest quality stuff when you start, but also don't just kind of avoid buying a whole ton of, for lack of a better term, junk, like things you just things without any potential at all. You want something that's moderately that you can make mistakes on, but if you do it right, something good's going to come out of it. If you're not planning, if you're trying to learn how to design or make bonsai, seedlings are will not help you with that goal. That's like growing bonsai.
It's a whole other art.
It's a whole other art, and that's definitely something some people enjoy, and that's what you buy if you want to do that. But if you're trying to, if you're learning how to make yamadori, for example, you probably want to buy some cheaper yamadori or nursery stock, or go source yard midori, stuff people are digging out of their yards. Like, you have to put in the effort, resources, sometimes time to acquire this material, and then experiment on it yourself. So
how do you know what has potential? Because I think you hit on something really key there. How do you know a piece of material is worth investing in?
Ask your teacher.
Yeah.
Not exactly, but that is part of the bonsai learning too, like understanding what is desirable and attractive in a tree, what characteristics are hard to change, easy to change. I think that is something you will learn, or you should learn.
I think the other thing, though, is, especially as a beginner, is you don't necessarily just have to get trees that can be show winners, right? So it's almost like, I also think you should focus on what's interesting to you, that you're most likely to want to put the work into, right? So I think that's another criteria for beginners, especially, is like, what do you want to work on, right? Because there's a lot of reps between where you are right now and where we're gonna be, right? So you can always recycle material and upgrade, but have material that's healthy. Like, yes, you can get a super cheap piece of material, but if you have to wait 3 years before you can work on it, like, is that like you're not going to get good fast, right? Doing that. So healthy and then something that interests you, I think, are two criterias for what to look for also.
How do you identify trees with potential or not? Like in your current search, if you're looking for a tree right now, what kind of criteria do you apply to the decision process?
Well, I'm really focused on a specific scope of work, like conifers and building conifers from collected material. So, that narrows things down a lot. And then I'm also really focused on, so like this, I kind of build it around what techniques do I want to get practice with, right? Not necessarily like which trees are my favorite. So, if it's already been lime sulfured and the whole thing is cleaned and like the live vein and deadwood are perfect, like that might not be a good tree for me to buy right now because I specifically want to get practice on, X, Y, and Z, right? And then if the tree is in a nursery pot or like in its collected container and is about to be put in, like is time to be put into a bonsai pot, like that might be a good project for me since that's the type of work I want to do.
I've heard that so seldom over the years that people that actually identify there's such a thing as techniques that you need to achieve your goals and that there's certain material that's going to support the technique learning, that's going to support the goal of making the trees you want. So it's actually good to hear that. Really good to hear that.
Yeah, it's really refreshing.
The other thing I'd say too is, I think we in this room have a very similar idea of like what bonsai is as a hobby, right? And have certain goals for it. But like it's totally fine to enjoy bonsai as just like, hey, I wanted to buy a really developed tree and keep it alive and enjoy the like having that piece of nature in my in my home. So nothing against that at all. But I think if you really want to get good at building trees quickly, then you do need to make some kind of targeted decisions around how you enjoy the hobby.
A really big practical tip, club auctions or club sales are a great place to get, pretty good material to practice on.
Yeah.
And, build pretty good trees out of for a reasonable price.
Yeah, Jonas and I were talking to Scott Elser, who has one of the best collections in the Pacific Northwest earlier this year. And we asked Scott, how do you have such a nice collection? What are the things you look for? And one of the main things he said was opportunity. You have to be in the room when the tree's at the auction. You have to be in the room when that vendor table's there. If you don't show up, if you don't leave your backyard, leave your house, and show up to places like the expo to shop the vendor area, you miss out on
the odds are a lot lower.
Yep.
Also, one of the trees I'm showing at the Pacific Bonsai Expo, I got at a Bay Island club auction.
Oh, nice.
For like $130, because there's not.
Which one is that? Which one is that?
The redwood.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Yes.
One other thing along the topic of, what's the best way to start your learning journey? I'd say for me, the one thing that's had the biggest impact is actually like the networking and the community aspect of it. So like if I would not have met Sam, if I wouldn't have reached out and like just gone to the bonsai garden and said, hey, can I volunteer? I never would have made any of these relationships that lead you to, oh, this is the kind of style I want to develop, or like here's where I can go train. So that community aspect I think is super important.
Yeah, it's kind of fun how willing bonsai people are to share. I think that's kind of special, and that's maybe one thing if you're trying to save up to go work with a bonsai professional or someone you really admire, find the best person in your local club and find the trees that call out to you the most and go work with them. In the meantime, help them repot like you've been doing with Sam. And that's a good way to, get your hands dirty and start working on trees.
Thanks so much for sharing all your tips today.
Thanks
for having us.
Having us, yeah.
We'll do it again before too long.
Of course.
Yeah. Cheers.
The music on today's podcast was brought to you by the fine folks at Blue Dot Sessions. Check them out at www.sessions.blue.